I can see a lot of new names and faces, so this is great. Okay. Okay, let's get started. Hi, Dr. Gage. Thank you for hosting tonight. I'm going to introduce you in a second. Thank you for everyone here joining our Scan for Success themed webinar. I am going to introduce Dr. Gage, and then we'll pass it over to him while he shares his screen. Some of you have also received some swag and some Starbucks gift cards. Hopefully you kind of got a Starbucks cup and your coffee, and you're enjoying it as you're kind of kicking back and relaxing to hear Dr. Gage talking tonight. So I will get started. So we have this recording and recorded, and we're ready to go. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Gage. Dr. Colby Gage is a practicing orthodontist, teacher, and dedicated father. He received his DMD degree from Western University of Health Sciences in Pomona, California, and his certificate in orthodontist from A.T. Still University in Mesa, Arizona. He currently serves as assistant professor of orthodontics at Western University and is the owner of Level Up Orthodontics in Parker, Colorado. Here at Grin, I can say that we are super excited to have Dr. Gage partner with Grin here to advance the future of orthodontists across multiple practices that Dr. Gage has Grin deployed. He has hundreds of patients. He has a variety of use cases that I personally have seen as we were looking at some material for this webinar. And he has successfully also involved the rest of his care team, which is amazing. Also, fun fact, as you guys know, usually my amazing co-founder and in-house orthodontist, Dr. Adam Schulhoff, and our CEO, usually he gives these webinars, and we thought that it's time to start hearing from our partner, Dr. Users, and Dr. Gage is our first one to be presenting for us. We look forward to have a lot of additional doctors kind of participate and talk about, and care team members as well, talk about how Grin has been impactful for them. And with that, I will go ahead and pass it over to Dr. Gage. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks, Pamela, for that great introduction. I'm just going to share my screen here. Okay, how are we looking?
Good.
Okay, well, awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming tonight. I think you guys got to hear a little bit about just all the different things that I'm involved with, and I'm so excited to be using Grin in my practice, and excited for the opportunity that Pamela and Dr. Schulhoff gave me to share some of those things with you guys. So for those of you that don't know me, just again, I went to A.T. Still University for orthodontics. I'm board certified in both Canada and the US for my time that I spent in Canada. Currently teaching orthodontic diagnosis at Western U, where I went to dental school. And where I'm using Grin right now, where I'm kind of showing a lot of these cases from, are two places. So I have a startup practice that I started in 2020. Probably the only thing good that came out of 2020. It's called Level Up Orthodontics in Parker, Colorado. And then I also am a partner at Reese's Dental and Braces in Denver. And so I have a practice there where we've deployed this at force. So that's been really exciting. And I'll show you those cases today. So just a really quick introduction of what is Grin. Grin is a multi-purpose platform for comprehensive communication with our patients. It allows us to do both remote monitoring as well as HIPAA compliant communication in a way that patients can take kind of a video log of their smile journey, if you would call it that, and share it with us. So on their end, they're getting the scope and using the app. And on the doctor's side, or the doctor facing side, we have the portal, which has very, very simple platform for keeping track of your patients, notifying you when there's new scans or new information, maintaining a chronologic order of those scans, and then your communication in the far right. So it's very, very simple. And I love that about it. I love that it's not complicated, and that the richness or the updates that are coming from users like myself that they're listening to are not necessarily complicating it, but just adding the features that we want. So it's been such an awesome journey to see it progress. So what is it really doing? There's so many things, and I'm going to share with you some of my favorite things, but one is just simply convenience. I mean, having this ability to communicate with the patient in an asynchronous fashion, using these videos really can reduce a lot of patients. So different types of check appointments, and I'll go over how I'm using it. But also that communication, keeping it flowing, even though for some doctors, they may say, well, if it's not broke, why fix it? But having that additional communication, especially in our current, post-COVID kind of state, has been a huge factor. Efficiency. I mean, a lot of times we talk about efficiency as being, okay, how many brackets are breaking and how many visits am I doing and what kind of appliances. And no matter what type of bracket system or aligners or whatever you're using, having that additional look at the patient before they come in, even in the door, has reduced our chair time significantly. Emergency situations are much easier to handle and triage. And we're really reducing kind of our no-shows as well, because patients, when they're coming in, are also coming in for meaningful appointments, not just kind of a routine 6-week or 8-week appointment. So it's been really, really awesome for that. We actually have patients that are living in Virginia that we're treating, and we're able to monitor them. So it's been really awesome. And then again, the oversight too, we're also being able to check up with them more frequently without seeing them in person. So compliance with things like hygiene, aligner wear is huge. And it really does follow that patient all the way from consultation to retention and everything in between. So I'll share with you. So that's just kind of a basic overview of what we're really able to do with this, and so much more. So it's really changed our practice. And these are the ones I really wanted to focus on, because for how we were doing things before, these are the key items that have really just been 100% impacted. And my staff just absolutely love how all these things have been better, and I'll go over that. So I think the big thing is that we have a really united front when we're talking to the patient. When we have communication with them, we have record of that. And so the patient care is a lot more in unison or in sync between the front and back office. It really supports our office culture, and I'll show you that. We use it for training, which is kind of a really fun aspect that we've really never been able to do before. We do increase the value during our appointments, again, making each appointment more meaningful. Hygiene compliance has gone way up in our practice. Still not perfect, but incredibly better since we've started using Grin. And I'm also going to talk to you about how Grin can be a virtual consultation tool, which is really exciting. So kind of going in a little bit about, when I started thinking about, okay, what are we going to talk about, or who, what would be the main things that all of you, as kind of either new users of Grin or interested users would want to hear. But what are the patients saying? And I always kind of ask them. And so I asked a bunch of people, even just recently, as I said, well, what do you like about Grin? And one of the moms said, well, I love that, I'm not the only person keeping track of brushing, and I'm not the only one kind of in charge of my son's hygiene. And so I tell them this right at the end of my consultation. I say, Mom, I know that you're concerned about things like brushing or aligner compliance, and don't worry, I'm going to be with you the whole time and be helping support that, so that I'll be talking to your son directly about this rather than having to go through you or you having to discipline him or whatever. So it's been a great relief off the parents' shoulders to be able to have that additional support. And one of my first users that did aligners, I asked him, I said, well, what do you think about the scanner? And do you like doing it? And he's like, sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to scan. And he's like, but it literally takes 30 seconds and I have these awesome images of my teeth. So he really thought it was so fast and easy, and it was really encouraging for him. So those are some of the things. And then this is kind of the big aha moment. And so I was at Reese's, and I was sitting on a patient. I was looking, at their progress, and she literally pulled up her phone and she said, Dr. Gage, check this out. And she had taken screenshots of the different videos that she had taken and put this in a collage and showed it to me on her phone. And so this is the patient sharing me her results in a clinical photo that would be akin to anything we would take in our office. So I thought, like, how cool is that I've now basically like engaged this patient as one of my staff members taking progress photos. So how much easier is it to be like, okay, well, now you see this progress, like how encouraging is that? And how much more likely is she going to share this with her friends and family, and in turn drive more patients into our practice? So it is a lot more than monitoring, because now we're turning our patients kind of on the offensive and giving them something to share, rather just having them awkwardly pull down their mask and, you know, show their smile to show off their braces. So this has been a really cool, and again, a huge, you know, just a eye opener, I guess, for me, that people would be so engaged. So I think what's really neat is just kind of going back to that time where maybe, you know, we were in orthodontic school and seeing patients, you know, maybe every 6 weeks or 4 weeks, and being really amazed by the amount of movement. But it's really shown my staff, like, wow, how fast are these teeth moving? And this was a patient I did at Reese's, where we had done extractions and then had them scan right at bonding. And on the right, you'll see the scan was taken 4 months later, right after their appointment with me. So we didn't see them at all for that 4 months. And we were able to see a huge change in just the alignment of the lower teeth and the leveling, as kind of those, we're getting a little bit of almost driftodontics going on here. And, you know, the next visit, we're going to bond the 7s and start working on the crossbite. So we now are taking all these visits where maybe there would be just a kind of a simple wire change and checkup. We did all that virtually. And that was super impactful, just looking at the schedule. So our patients are loving that aspect of being able to not necessarily come in as often. So we use a team approach at my office in Level Up Orthodontics, and we're really all hands on deck, which starts kind of at the far left here at the new patient exam. So we have a brochure that Grin has provided with us that has the QR code for downloading the app. And so I talk about Grin in the consult just really briefly, that we're going to be monitoring them. They download the app and we do the invite, all of that in the actual consult. So that has not been very difficult to do, because there's always paperwork and other things to be filling out. So it does fill up a little bit of time if my TC needs to leave the room. And on the first appointment, that's when we do that very first scan in the office, and you're seeing the video there of my patient. And that's right after bonding. So that gives us that initial scan, and we really do that in the office. And that's a big key for success. And then active treatment, the remote monitoring, emergency care, hygiene, all that stuff is handled by the front desk. And I'll talk a little bit about that. And then we're using it after, again, for showing the patients before and afters, so they can see that, you know, their progress on the app, as well as with those videos. And then all of our retention checks, or just any continued communication. So it's really taking that patient through their whole journey. So with the team delegation, I think this is really important, because anytime we're going to take on something, you know, who's going to do it? And our office has really decided to make, you know, active treatment as part of the front desk. And that's because our front desk, our scheduling coordinators, they spend a lot of time on the phone, handling a lot of different emergencies and questions related to treatment. And it's surprising how much they know of how to talk people, you know, off a ledge or off of coming in for an emergency visit, or shifting things around. So giving them the ability now to asynchronously communicate with these patients, but having high quality video lets us all train and be synced up, so we're saying the same things. We do make sure that the clinical staff are 100%, you know, kind of our scan specialists, making sure that scan is done really well. And they're also reviewing the conversations before the patient comes in. So they're just having that open and just seeing if there was a lot of conversations about hygiene on Grin, that if we were going back and forth on there, that they're reinforcing that when they come in. So it's not a surprise. So I actually did the first 50 or so patients on my own. And I felt like that was really important for me, just to get the hang of it, to see what kind of questions were being asked. Now, I think you could definitely delegate this from day one, but I felt like this was a very good, easy way for me to start. And it also let me see the quality of the scans and kind of just understand pitfalls before I really kind of just handed it off. But when my staff saw how excited I was about it and how much it saved visits and how much our patients liked it, they were all for it. So it's been really great to see, again, how much they now like Grin, and they're kind of the spokesman for it in the office. So just as a, you know, kind of the next step here, you know, now we have to think, okay, well, how do we do this in a clinic day? Because this is really difficult for a lot of offices where they're maybe booking, you know, sometimes 50 minutes or 60 minutes for a start. And it's like, how do you get all that done in such a short amount of time? So we actually use the scanner and the Grin platform as our way of giving hygiene instructions. So we've kind of eliminated that now from our bonding time, which was normally about 5 or so minutes. So then we just walk them over to our, this is kind of our makeshift, you know, scanning area that we have. That could be the brushing station, and we get them out of the clinic chair and have them stand up and take the first scan. And so they upload it right then. It takes about 30 seconds. And then we just give them the little whatever hygiene kind of goodie bag that they need. And that's their kind of hygiene kind of pep talk is right there. And it works really well. And I have to say, spending time talking about how to brush braces, really comes into play after they have a problem. And most people will either do it really well or they're going to need help. And so we're right there with Grin from day one to make sure they do that. So that's kind of how we've managed to fit this into the same 60-minute bonding appointment that we've always had. You certainly could extend the visits, but I know so many people work on doctor time and scheduling, and trying to change your whole template's very difficult. And I don't think that anyone needs to add time. I think that's really important. Even a busy practice like Risa's, where we see lots of patients a day, it doesn't have to affect your schedule just to add this additional step. So again, I mentioned in our office, everybody is looking at Grin, either the clinical staff before visits, or that's the front desk communicating, or even me looking at some of the things. So when everyone's looking at it, they all see the scripting. And I know that everybody has their own way of wording things. I think my motto actually came from a professor that I had at AT Still, Dr. Seabank, and he said, no one likes surprises. That was his motto in orthodontics. And so that's been my kind of mantra moving forward, is I want no one to be surprised about anything I do. I want it to be the most boring, fun office that you can be at. So if everyone has the same information and same scripting, they're going to hear it every different way, and no one can really find any gaps there. So I love that. I love also that when we're using Grin and we're decreasing the total number of visits and decreasing just kind of routine check appointments, now every single visit is impactful. Every single visit is meaningful. And if you think about an orthodontic office, what are you really good at? Really good at consults. I mean, that's something that I think most orthodontists do really well at, making an impactful, memorable experience in the consult. First visit, when they're starting their braces or aligners or getting an expander, they're super, that's a super memorable visit. And then debond, is also a big visit, but it's kind of the stuff in between that we get kind of lost. And I think if we can condense that as much as possible, or show the progress of those visits, we're making them seem really fun and interesting. And then not boring the patient, or having them ask the questions, well, when are they coming off? Because I'm just tired of this. So that memorable visit is super huge. So that really is what plays into our office cultures. We want every visit to be impactful and fun. We want families to connect. We want to have time to connect with our patients. And we quiz each other in our office of people's names and parents' names. And we try to follow the examples of so many great orthodontists that we've all known that get to know their patients, personally. And so that's really where this has come in, is that increased communication has given us a better connection and more memorable experiences with our patients. So we use this for everything in our office. This is not just an aligner thing. This is not just a braces thing. This is not just an appliance thing. This is for every single type of patient that we see. So from our clear aligner patients, which love this product so much because it literally saves them so many very short, almost sometimes meaningless visits, to our braces patients, where we're extending visits. We use passive self-ligation, so I use SLX bracket primarily at Risa's, and I use the Damon Ultima system at Level Up, and both have been awesome for these kind of extended intervals, especially at the beginning. And then for our expansion checks, that's a huge thing. So we use the 3D printed expanders from Motor City Labs and absolutely love them, and love to be able to monitor patients in this way. So I know probably you're kind of thinking, okay, well, how often do you get these scans and how do you use them? So for our braces patients, we scan the day of bonding, and then we scan about every 28 days. And that's an option on Grin that you can just really pick right when you start signing the patient up. You can pick a 28-day scan interval. And usually our first initial visit's like 3.5 to 4 months, depending on what we're doing. For our expanders, I have 2 different expansion protocols depending on the severity or what we're actually trying to get out of the expander, but we still scan every 28 days regardless. And then their first visit back in the office is either in 3 months or 6 months. For aligners, this is probably one of our most efficient types of treatments in the office, because we're just scanning every 2 weeks. And I didn't find a difference between scanning every week versus 2 weeks. I found if there was a slight unseat or tracking issue, I didn't notice that it compounded after the second tray. But we're just seeing patients back for IPR, which I've standardized at tray 15, or iTero scans for additional aligners. And for appliances, like the carrier appliance is a great example of something where you're literally getting the patient back only just to give them a pep talk on wearing more elastics or to plan for taking it off. So this is completely, for something like that, it's completely gone as a basically an on-demand appointment where we're just going to scan you every 28 days until we see, you know, whatever result we're looking for with the given appliance for a reactivation. And then we can mail patients additional elastics if we're trying to change to Force 2 elastics, let's say. We can just send them, just mail them those additional elastics if we make a change. And then retention, this is still kind of in development. What I think it worked the best for us is just scanning the patient every week for about 1 month, because I find that the patients that are going into retention, they do need a little bit more guidance, especially if they're feeling like the retainer's getting a little loose or maybe feeling tight. So I like to have them scan every week just for the first month. And then after that, making a recommendation for continued daytime wear or just go straight to nighttime at that point. So that's been kind of our protocols, and that's worked really well. And it's really easy for my staff to pick up. It's like, okay, is it either 14 or 28? And they know really we're off the bat without having to ask me what that is. So I mentioned a little bit of how we're using Grin for team training. And this is an image that I took after an adjustment for a patient. And I noticed a couple of things that I wasn't too happy about. And I certainly didn't go and you know, chew out the assistant. But how often do we see an image or we see a patient back and we realize that, oh, that tooth wasn't tied in right, or I asked for, you know, this thing and I got something else, or that steel tie really wasn't doing anything. Or in this case, the Colby tie, I have one where, you know, there was, you know, the tail of the wire was not tucked up against the bracket for hygiene. And then the other one where the Colby tie was on top of the wire versus under the wire. And so sometimes that can cause slippage. So it was one of those things where like there was multiple things here that I definitely know I needed to go back and train. So these images are great to just look at bracket position, but also to see how, you know, your assistants are doing at tying things in. And normally we're waiting until they come back and then we're like, oh crap, you know, that really didn't do much. And hopefully that, you know, the patient doesn't realize that you kind of wasted the last visit and have to redo something or go backwards in a wire. But now with this, we've been able to call people back, and we actually had a patient where they had scanned and a door was open. We had missed one of the anterior doors, and we, you know, my front desk person saw it. She's in braces as well, so she recognized that the door was open, and immediately had the patient just come back in on a day I wasn't even there to just put the wire back in. So that was an amazing thing where we just, you know, made up that lost time by having them come in, and it didn't take any doctor time, which was awesome. So that's been a huge thing. I think a lot of us are thinking, okay, well, how is this going to help hygiene? A lot of it is the increased follow-up. And I actually had a patient a few years ago where she actually developed a white spot from what I could see, at least, you know, from my naked eye in about 14 weeks. So if you are extending your intervals and maybe you're going 8 weeks between appointments, I had one where for whatever reason we missed it. And then the second time they came back, the mom was furious because her daughter had a white spot and she felt like we hadn't done our due diligence. So from the app, they're uploading those images. I'm reviewing them. And if there is a really poor hygiene, I'm taking a video review. So recording myself, you know, talking and giving them coaching about where to brush. And you can use a little hand there, and that hand arrow will help point out the areas that they're missing. And then I just upload this photo. I push it right to their phone so they can see kind of the different angles that they need to be hitting. And I give them encouragement, and then I change their scan interval. So I'll talk a little bit about how I used to do things, because maybe this is some thoughts about different protocols that you guys can do in your office. But what we used to do before Grin was we would have the clinical staff check, grade, and record the hygiene. If they got a C grade, we would just review oral hygiene that visit and just give them kind of a warning. The second time we would take photos, we wouldn't do the adjustment or change wires, and then we would send a letter to the dentist and have a more kind of one-on-one talk with the parents and with the kid. And then by the third C, we would send an official letter, like from the front desk, that had kind of some of the, you know, warnings and whatnot. And then if it happened again, basically we were just taking the braces off at that point. So it doesn't always get to that, you know, that fourth, you know, C grade or lower, but when it does, you're glad that you at least followed a protocol. Well, with Grin, it's really changed how we do this, because now every scan is an opportunity to check hygiene. So we're not doing it every 8 weeks or longer. You know, we're seeing them, you know, every 28 days we're checking hygiene. And if we see something, we're immediately sending that video review, or I'm sending them that picture of the brushing angles that I like. And that could be individual to your office. It might be a document. It might be, you know, some kind of photo that you have. Any of those work great. And then I change the scan interval to weekly. And then I tell them, hey, until this gets better, I want you to take a scan every week. And then at that point, we're just reviewing it at the appointment to really make sure that they're driving home everything they need to do. And that has taken anyone that's hit a level C from our grading, that's immediately put them to at least a B, if not better. And we've seen people completely change their hygiene, where sometimes you think they're so far gone that there's nothing you can do. And this has been huge. And our parents have been like, thank you so much for watching this. And I don't feel like I'm going to get stuck in that situation again where someone comes to me and is mad because I didn't do my part. So huge thing. So at the end of the day, it's much more simple than our old protocol, way more communication and cooperation. And again, that mantra that I told you is less surprises. They shouldn't ever be surprised when they come in. So this also has changed our care calls, and it kind of goes along with that increased communication, because before we used to call the patient back, within a week or so after putting on appliances or after a particularly hard visit. And so now here's one of my patients that we put in self-ligating brackets, Ken, and so he was bonded on the 18th of March, and then on the 22nd, I just said, hey, how's everything going? And he just did a quick response. Yeah, everything's good. I'm just kind of working through things. And we were able to give him that encouragement. So instead of having the front desk call, get a voicemail and not really get any interaction with the patient, we were able to, preemptively answer some questions. And it is amazing how many questions patients do have that they're just wondering about or just curious about, that sometimes even help your office. They may say, oh, remember that toothbrush that you said you were going to sell us, or that whitening kit? Can I get that? And we've actually had a patient buy 3 of our toothbrushes that we sell in the office through the Grin app, because they were so impressed by seeing the pictures of their hygiene that they like, yeah, I think I do want that extra extra boost to their brushing routine. So care calls are basically eliminated for our office now. So just to kind of summarize some best practices for acceptance of the scan, we do always get that scan at the end of their visit. We have had patients where they have no problem scanning on their own, but just for them to get used to the app, it's awesome when you can do that. But the scanner is so easy that you can literally just hand it to them and have them do it at their house, and they will do that. The video reviews are great just to review both bad and good behaviors. If you're seeing really good brushing, sometimes I'll do a video review and just talk about how great their progress is. But the video review is nice because they get to hear your voice, they see that you're paying attention, and my front desk just cues me to do those, and it takes probably about 30 seconds to do. For the phone call, I think it's important to use it to the full extent, to make sure you tell patients if they are calling in for something that could be handled on Grin, to tell them to use Grin, to not necessarily call the office, because I love not hearing the phone ring. I'd much rather have an asynchronous text message with a video versus someone on the phone trying to tell me what's broken. But if they're not scanning like you should, I definitely recommend doing that care call and saying, hey, can you please scan? Because sometimes maybe they turn their notifications off, or there's something, maybe they lost their password. So that's really easy to fix once you figure out what's wrong. And then just always reinforcing that, hey, if you ever have any issues, just message us on the app. And that's usually my last thing that I tell patients before they scan, is like, hey, this is your lifeline to our office. I say, we prefer, messages through Grin, because we can really help you that way and we can see what's going on, versus just calling in and trying to describe it over the phone. So I want to talk a little bit about remote consultations, because this is something I've seen a lot of people say, hey, how are you guys using this tool now? For us as a startup practice, it's been really, really helpful, because we started during COVID. So we had a lot of people that wanted that virtual consult for their first kind of first touch point before they actually came in. And Grin has a solution that's a lot more affordable than other options out there. So there's some options where they'll install a widget on your website and charge you, $200 or more, just to have the option of doing remote consults. And so if you've never done them before, or don't think there's much demand, it's kind of hard to bite the bullet and sign up for a year contract for something that you may not really use that much. And about, for us, in those first few months, about 10% of our consultations wanted remote to start. And maybe that's what you guys have experienced as well. But Grin's solution for remote consultation is way slicker, and it only charges you essentially when patients are using it, instead of having just a blanket monthly fee that's not really doing anything for your office. So the kind of the workflow for a remote consultation using Grin, first the new patient will submit that request to your custom landing page, and Grin creates this for your office. And this will be rolled out really soon to all Grin users. So it's just kind of a, where they've been trialing it and seeing a lot of good results with this, and making sure it's absolutely top notch. But once that patient finds you on the landing page, which you can just embed into your website, or you can email them if they've started an email conversation with you. You can email them that link, or just you can have the office ship a Grin scope directly to the patient. Grin also has the option for them to take care of that. So if you don't want the administrative burden of having to provide a scope to a patient, they will ship that directly to the patient, which is awesome. On the app, it has all of the tutorials about how to scan and how to put the scope on the camera. And honestly, it's really easy, because these patients that want virtual consultations, they're already tech savvy. They have no issue with downloading an app and taking a scan and comparing their images to the tutorial videos. So if someone's selecting for a remote consultation, you're already kind of getting someone who's a little bit more tech savvy. So I wouldn't worry about that. But after they've downloaded that app, now you can just go in and, using the same platform, record that remote consultation, that video review for them. And so it's really a super streamlined approach that doesn't take a lot of extra time from what you guys are already doing in the office if you're using Grin. So just a little bit about the remote consultation, why it's so great. These are not part of your active patient count. So with Grin, you pay for a certain number of monitored patients as part of like a subscription cost. But for this, the only cost is really the scope and the shipping. That's the main thing that you're using. Again, you have that centralized communication. So if you're using SmileSnap or using your website to do a virtual consult, you're going kind of back and forth between maybe email, the app, and then your practice management and your front desk. And it gets it's a kind of an interesting workflow to take these images and really make something out of it. This is totally centralized, so it makes a really, really big impact. Of course, you're getting high quality images, and then the video tutorials help that patient get through their first scan, so you're not worried about them not having the proper information. So this is a little bit how we did, or how the remote consultation looks like from the dashboard. So you're going to log into your Grin account, and on the left-hand side, you'll see that the patients that we're doing monitoring, those are labeled RM. And then the ones that are consultations, those are labeled RC. So they stick out in the kind of lineup, and you'll be able to see the scans that they take and any questions that they ask. And then it's really easy just to send a video review and then hand that off essentially to the TC. So super streamlined. It's not like a separate part of Grin, but rather just an embedded feature in there, which you can turn on and off if you're going to use it. So with the virtual consultations, what we were doing before is we had this embedded into our website, so they could upload photos directly into a form on our website. We instructed them to use spoons or something that they had to try to retract. So very rarely did we get really, really great quality photos, and I think that's most people's reservations with doing this, is that the images are so lackluster that you feel really kind of ridiculous even trying to diagnose off them. But once we got those photos, that would go to our new patient coordinator, and we go to her email, then she would upload those into the practice management software as if we had taken them. So she would make a composite 8 out of those images. Then she would notify me to do a video review, and I used a Chrome plugin called Loom, and Loom's a free service, but it really doesn't have some of the features that that Grin has, is basically just a screen share. Okay, and I would do that, and then I would upload the link to my new patient coordinator, and then she would email it to the patient. So that's kind of how the follow-up process would go. So again, now with Grin, this is what we've been able to do. So our most recent one, we just had this last week, was a younger sibling. So we had a younger sibling that wasn't in the clinic, but the mom wanted to bring in for consult. So we just said, here, have another scope, and we're going to send you this invite, and we just want you to take a scan of your 7-year-old's teeth when you're at home. And that helped us initiate a follow-up, and we put that patient actually into observation because we didn't see anything that was super alarming at that time. So that was just an example of how we were able to really quickly pivot within our own our normal clinical routine and actually get an additional person kind of in the books in the observation cycle. So with the Grin protocol, you can now either just send that directly from the front office, or you can have Grin send it. The patient uploads a scan from home. that basically prompts me to do a video review. It goes right to the Grin portal, which I'm looking at when the patients are in the chair. And then the TC initiates a follow-up within Grin. So instead of changing from multiple platforms and using different softwares or getting really bad photos, now we've kept it all in one place. And that's been incredibly helpful. And we're excited to use that more as that just becomes a bigger part of our practice. So that's kind of the main points that I really wanted to talk about with you guys. And I wanted to address a few things that I really love about Grin, and just also talk about some common concerns. Um, so what are some things that, talking to doctors that are using Grin, or just staff and team members, that I think it's important to address? One is sometimes, well, it's like, wait, this is a 12-year-old or 13-year-old, are we going to use their phone? And is that going to somehow be, weird, or just seem, are the parents going to want it on their phone? So you can actually create an account for the child or for the parent, and then they can have it on multiple devices. So we actually had a patient come in this morning. The mom brought the patient to the appointment. She was the one who had set up the account, but it was actually the dad who brought the daughter to her bonding appointment. So she had already had the account set up, and the dad knew the password and actually just logged in on his phone, and was able to take the first scan of her daughter's teeth after bonding, from the same account. So it really can be on multiple phones if you'd like, or you can just have it on the child's phone. And we found that the kids that really get involved in Grin and in our office culture and everything that we're trying to do are the ones that have it on their own phone, so we can talk directly to them. And so that's been a great thing. One of the things that's like, well, wait, they're texting this. This is kind of a new thing. If I delegate this to the front desk and they don't respond for 6 hours, or they miss something, or it's like they respond after hours, how does that go? Because, we're almost telling patients that they have 24-hour access to us, which is clearly not something that we're all, super eager to do. But what we found is that because it's asynchronous, because it's within the app, the patients actually don't mind that we answer them during normal business hours, or they don't necessarily expect us to be answering them back at the same, pace that they would have a text message. It's not showing up in their iMessage on their iPhone, for example. It's showing up within the app. So they're actually very understanding if we do miss something, or don't respond back the second that they do it. But it's very easy because we keep this open in our clinic. So when we see a message come up, it syncs between our front desk and our back office. So if I'm responding, the front desk sees those responses. So they know that, okay, someone answered that. And if it's not, they notice that it's unread, and so they can go and respond to that. And so this is kind of funny, but how are we supposed to do this and maintain on our short bonding appointments? Dr. Cheap Smiles is going to fire me for sure if I fall behind. Common question for staff, and it's like, how are we going to do this? I mean, we already, sometimes patients show up 10 minutes late, and then they're difficult, hard to get the NOLA in, or just hard to bond them. And yeah, you want to make sure you finish on time so that your day goes well. Again, finding that time for a 30-second scan is not hard. And because we've had the front desk kind of initiate the app download before the patient comes back, is just kind of part of their contract, it's super smooth when they actually get into the chair. And many times the kids have it open to the scan screen. So basically the last step before putting on the scope and scanning, right when they're sitting down. And we're like, okay, we're going to do that at the end. And again, for us, we've decided to kind of move all of our oral hygiene education to the app, other than just a quick rundown of the different things that we're using. And that has saved us a ton of time, and also gotten them kind of to move in a journey where they're going from the clinical chair and saying, okay, we're done with this part now. We're going to go over to the brushing station and do our first scan. So hopefully Dr. Cheap Smiles is a little bit, happy that it's going faster. So, and then the last one, I think, there are different monitoring systems out there. And the common thing I hear is, oh, well, you can't scale this. Grin is too much. It's too much work, or there's too much of a human component. It just seems like a lot of work. And to be honest, when we're all on board with this, it really isn't. And that extra amount of work for us just reinforces our culture. So the question is, can you afford to not double down on the culture of your office? Can you afford to not communicate in a personal way with your patients? And what's the true cost of that level of communication and engagement? If we haven't already tried it, I would recommend giving it a shot. Because if your patients, each one of your patients becomes a walking billboard for your practice, and does what my patient did, where she's literally showing her progress to her friends. She was comfortable enough to show it to me and everyone in the office when she came in. I'm sure she's doing that for others. So don't be afraid to take the steps to do things that your patients will love. They're going to pay you back tenfold for anything that you're investing in that. And with that, yeah, I'll kind of open it up for some questions and hear a little bit from Pamela, and appreciate you guys logging in and being with us tonight. So thank you.
Thank you very, very much. This was phenomenal. I didn't mention some logistics in the beginning of the call, so everyone can feel free to obviously kind of open their videos, because it's always great to see the facial reactions, and also unmute themselves for any Q&A. I especially love, we're starting to see some faces here. That's great. I especially love how I saw Dr. Gage in some of your screenshots and stories, how you're starting to adopt also new functionality that comes out. So we have, weekly, bi-weekly releases of, cloud-based software and all of that fun stuff. But you have actually taken functionality and deployed it with tags for findability, and also in the scan reviews that you've shown a couple of times that have been useful. So that's amazing. Let's open it up for questions. Yeah. So I'll start, maybe if everyone's shy here, I'll start with the first question here. You speak, we have a lot of our doctors on the call here, and a lot of them have been taking that approach of being the first responder, if you will, or the primary responder to these cases. Some doctors have even said that they just feel like they're too curious to see what the patients are writing and how the scans look like. But obviously it would scale, to your point, much more if you are able to involve the team. The team is thankful for being involved, and if you can run some delegation. Tell us about, if you could shed some light on what's been successful between you transitioning to responding to those first 50 cases, and as you grew and kind of delegated to the rest of the care team and the practice, what were some of the things you did in order to make that transition successful?
Yeah. Well, one of the most helpful things for me was, knowing that I got an email notification whenever someone took a scan or had a comment. So for those first 50 cases, I had all those emails go to my work email, so that when I was monitoring that email, either from my phone or at the office, that when someone took a scan or had a question, I got that email notification. And then when I was ready to delegate it, I just simply changed the email and said, all the emails are now going to the front desk. So they were already scanning emails on a daily basis or hourly basis. So then every time a new scan or a new comment came, they would just click on the email, it would open up the app, and then they could respond there. So it was almost just kind of like creating an email trail, which I think we're always going to use, because again, it just prompts you to go look at the Grin portal, and it doesn't overload our email inbox. We'll get several scans a day because we have lots of patients, but they know, again, that the front desk has a system for if there's multiple people watching, then they won't, if once they open something, they either have to finish it or mark it as unread, right? So that's kind of how that we close the loop on that responsibility. And then from the clinical side, every time we took a scan after bonding, I just spent those first 50 cases sitting the clinical assistant down that did the bonding and reviewing bracket position, reviewing next steps, and just commenting on, some of the aspects of the treatment. So I like talking about the treatment. I like planning for what's next with the assistants. And so while they were kind of finishing up their notes, I would say, okay, look at the scan. Actually, we didn't quite get that rotation, that bracket all the way into the rotation. So we're going to plan on repoing that while we're in light wires. So that helped them kind of realize, okay, this is a tool not just for, after the fact, but it's actually helping us plan. So there's a little bit from the doctor part for sure. I mean, any type of new thing in the office kind of first, I think, needs to come from the doctor. But as I got more excited about it and they saw how enthusiastic I was, and then seeing how happy the patients were and how much more communication we got, they just took it over, and it was awesome. So
that's great. Thank you very much. We're getting some questions in the chat channel. I'll I'll try and make sure that we respond here. So we had a question early on for those of you who don't have the chat kind of window open about our Grin integrating with what active integrations do we have with software today. So we are actively working on integration with PMS softwares in the market today. We're kind of prioritizing them and going and kind of deploying those that are most deployed across kind of orthodontics, and we are going to have some coming very soon. But in the meantime, what I will say is that the Doctor Web app is very simple in terms of downloading those records, downloading those scans, and using them wherever you need to for patient records. So that's assuming that the software allows you the upload, of course. So there are some more questions around, with I got a direct message asking me about better delegation when it comes to the care team. So yes, we are working on what's called role-based access control. So the ability for additional care team to have number one, kind of their own identity in the platform, so that the patient knows whether it's, the treatment coordinator, the clinical assistant, or the doctor responding. So that's kind of the first phase that's going to come out really soon. And then it goes on and on in terms of the level of permissions that those different roles will have in the system. So that's coming soon. So stay tuned. Another question that came in for active patients: what financial packages do you have available per patient, bulk discounts per month? Okay, so this is a question about our pricing. Our pricing pretty much takes into consideration the idea of bulk. So it's a very simple, we try and we don't try and do very much a per patient, per scan, per month type of approach. Our approach is very much trying to get kind of the practice on board and make this make sense for deploying as much as possible across the board. So with that, we came up with a pricing plan, which is a very simple $199 per month, and where you have some annual discounts. And for those participating in this webinar, you even have an additional discount, which we'll follow up with after the webinar. And then it's just an additional $24 per the scope. So very simple pricing. This kind of gives you unlimited scans per patient. So, and to Dr. Gage's point from before, remote consultations, retentions, observations, accounts are not considered towards those licenses. So we want to really promote the usage of the platform for you to convert these patients into active treatment. Any more questions?
I'll just make a comment if nobody, or in between, until other people have any questions. First of all, Doc, unbelievable job. What I loved hearing is some things that I'm not even employing in my practice, and I need to, because you're doing some things better than even we are. So that's fantastic. One thing that you may be doing, I love your approach to the hygiene. If it gets to a point where it is bad, it is very, very easy. I'm sure you know, right on the side of the patient's scan, to click on the 3 dots and download that video and throw it into an email to the dentist, CCing mom and dad. And now we know we're totally covered. And you're basically, having the dentist say, hey, or saying to the dentist, let's do 3-month visits for hygiene, or whatever it may be, right? And they're not just getting an email saying, hey, little Johnny needs to do a better job brushing, but they're getting the video and seeing exactly what's going on in their mouth. And the coolest part to that is then, it happened in my practice, like a week later, I've got that practice's hygienist's kid in my consultation room, because the hygienist saw that cool video that we sent to her practice and said, this is cool, we're going there. So, just a lot of great things that are happening when even other practitioners, general dentists, are seeing this kind of thing.
That's a great suggestion, Adam. I love that. And I love too that once you just put the same information in front of everyone, now it's no longer what did you write in the letter, and was it strong enough? And what's people's opinions of bad hygiene, right? So that's such a great way to just get them on your team. I love that.
Yeah, yeah. And we were talking about, like the immediate response. I'm finding the same thing because it is asynchronous and it's within the app. It's like they're connected and they know they're connected. They know somebody's going to get back to them, but it's not like they have your personal cell phone to text you. And I've also got now, we've always had a team member taking call on the weekend. And sometimes it's a little bit of a fight, especially like it's July 4th weekend coming up. Who's taking call? I don't want it. You don't want it. But now everybody's really cool about it because we have not had to go into the office on a weekend in the longest time. Once you have the photos and you can respond to the patient with a video and show them exactly where they need a snip or what they need to do, it really, really alleviates any of those needing to go in over the weekend appointments.
That's great. Yeah, the emergencies just in general are so much more calm in our office because we're literally responding to exactly what's going on versus them kind of making up in their mind what they think the implications of a broken power chain are or a broken bracket. And we can say, look, this isn't poking, it looks good, but here, put some wax here or whatever. And that's been huge. And our front desk was doing that anyways over the phone, but they love this so much more because now it's like, okay, I don't have to guess what they're talking about. And when they do come in, we can book an appropriate amount of time and literally say in the SOS appointment on our practice management, we just put, broken upper right 6. So the assistant already knows when they see that patient coming in, I'm going to get that bracket ready. And when you use, some of the tools, I know Adam, you've, used a lot of 3M products and stuff. When you're using LPOP and we know exactly what bracket it is, that they're probably in and out of the chair in 5 minutes. And that took something that we might've booked a 22 unit or 20-minute appointment for, now down to in and out. And, we're not going to book anything less than 10, but basically that's where we're at. So it's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm not doing it, but we do have some doctors at every appointment, they're reviewing the Grin scan prior to the appointment, or, some of them are doing it in huddle for the longer appointments. So they're knowledgeable going into this exactly where the patient basically is based on the scan that could have been taken a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago.
That's awesome.
Great. There's another question coming in the chat, and came in on the chat channel. Are you scheduling? So this is a question for Dr. Gage here. Are you scheduling your next adjustment appointment when they're in office or scheduling as needed based on the Grin scan? So somewhat related.
So we're only doing as needed or on demand appointments for appliances like the carrier motion or expanders. For our adjustments, we are booking them out. But sometimes what we're doing on that appointment may change based on what we're seeing in the scan. But we're usually pushing those out to the 12, 14 week mark because we do want to have something in the practice management system. We want to have an appointment fix just because, again, from a follow-up perspective, I don't want those patients showing up on my needs appointments list, that we're running. I want to make sure that they at least have a place. And we do tell the patients, hey, we know this is super far out, but this is really when the next time we're going to do some major changes are. For our patients that live out of state, we are doing on demand for them. No matter what their modality is. And if we don't do any IPR on the first scan, then we're just setting a follow-up date for the end of when we anticipate their aligners to be done. So
that's great. Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Again, so thank you very, very much. I think there's a lot of lessons here, as Dr. Schohoff was saying, that we ourselves at Grin can take away and start talking about in terms of operational efficiencies involving the practice, affording that convenience to the patient and that extra hygiene, those extra hygiene touch points, and so many more things that we learned here. Scan for success. So thank you. Thank you again for hosting this with us tonight. And thank you for everyone who joined. We will follow up with a recording and the special offer as well. We'll remind you for those new doctors and existing doctors as well.
Well, thank you.
Great.
Thanks, Dr. Schohoff. I appreciate your time and looking forward to all the good stuff coming as you roll it out. So we're excited.
No, thank you so much. Really much appreciated. And thank everybody that's been on.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you. Have a good evening.